Hello. Glad you could join us. What you're about to hear is not financial advice, legal counsel, or investment instruction. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are only those of the hosts and guests and do not comprise professional advice. Dilly follows where money flows and what is impacted because of it. You'll hear references to things that will always be available in the show description or episode notes for you to dive deeper into and check out. Enjoy the show.
Welcome back to Do Dilly. I'm Jonathan.
I'm Carl. What's good, y'all?
And we got an exciting episode today. We are talking about convenings and events in the age of AI. I'm excited about this episode for a couple reasons. One, because it's my belief that convening and gathering is one of the most important parts of any modern media company or in a creator's bag. And it's also one of the hardest to execute at scale. But if you do it well, you can create an incredible business for yourself. So we're excited to jump into that and talk about some examples, some things you can do, and then also some things that are happening in the ecosystem that I think are really special that anyone can kind of take some insight from.
Yeah, John's excited about this more than anyone in the world because John is a convenings nerd, bro. Like, you are a nerd, dog, when it comes to this. You be nerding out at the crib like, yo, did you see Kansas did this? Da-da-da-da. Check this out. They building a whole new This is your space, bro. This is your space. And as a person myself who, like, you know, started a convenience business as well, nowhere near where John has been when it comes to this, but I'm excited to talk about this too.
Yeah, it's exciting. I think that, you know, to kick off, I want to delineate a couple of things because I think sometimes what happens is, you know, we're live from New York. So in a city like New York, there's so many events every day, right? Today's a Friday, so we could walk down the street in Soho and bump into someone on the way to an event. It's also Fashion Week, right? So you got all kinds of stuff popping off in the city. I think the difference between a convening and an event is really, really important. And I want to structure that out because it's going to help talk through some of the reasons why these businesses get so big. So the way I define a convening is a consistent gathering of people for a purpose, a moment, or a shared activity. An event can be a convening, but every convening is not an event. The reason an event is a little different in my definition is because events can be one-offs or ad hoc. So they don't have to sort of repeat or have consistency, but they can still be successful. So it's not a problem. But a convening starts to actually shape the culture of the people who go, the culture of the environment it takes place in, and the wider world's approach and understanding of it, which we'll get into later. So I just wanted to kind of shape that out because the words we use help shape the, you know, environment we're in. So a convening versus an event. Does that make sense, Carl?
I mean, I think what you're trying to really say is that when I go and I make partial invites, you saying that that's not a convening, that's an event. Or are you saying the opposite? Are you saying that is an event, but that's not necessarily a convening?
So I'm saying that's an event because you might not be doing the same thing month over month, week over week, or year over year. My definition isn't to say that there's anything wrong with that. It's that the reason convenings can grow is because they keep a certain set of promises. So a convening is happening year after year, which means people can get familiar with it. You can start to organize your time or your budget around it, and you know where it's going to be, who's going to be there, and what it's going to feel like. And so the convening gains trust with an audience because it consistently delivers on that thing. It could be the kind of people, it could be the kind of event, it could be the kind of feeling, it could even be the environment, but there's consistency so you can trust it.
Got you. Yeah. Ain't no consistency in my partial invites. I'll just be like, yeah, come through, come link. And then I don't link for a minute. So I see, I definitely see the point that you're making. I feel like there's several convenings that we talk about in the culture a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And they typically happen, you know, every year or every other year.
Mm-hmm.
but I think going into the business today is going to be really interesting just because, when we attend the convenings, we're there to, you know, take photos, tell folks that we were there, meet new folks, obviously, and especially the social aspect of the convenings actually has changed the way we convene to begin with.
Right.
Um, but I guess for me, the idea of convenings as a business, the interest level that I've had in it has really started. For me, it started like several years ago. I'd say probably like 2015, 2016, when I first went to Tech Day, which was in Chelsea Piers in the West Side, where basically all these like really cool startups would come and meet up, and they basically set up a table and everybody would talk about their business. And my homie who had started a tech company way back then, I attended with him and I basically worked his table with him. He made a company called Befriend, which was like a social app. It's no longer in existence now, and he's in Puerto Rico sailing all the time. So it's all behind us now. But um, that's really when I got into the like understanding that convenings is a thing.
Hmm.
And of course, like, even younger, I used to go to the car show every single year, and I would go to like Comic-Con, but I think I was too young back then to really understand the convenings environment
Hmm.
and to understand the value of these businesses, because that's what they are. So I'm really kind of excited to kind of get into this. What about you though? When was your start of like really feeling this type of industry, or at least what like piqued your interest in it?
Yeah, I think so. For me, in a former life, um, I was part of the founding team of a business called Blavity Inc. One of the things that the business is known for globally now is called AfroTech. AfroTech started in 2016 in San Francisco, and it's since grown to gather around, I think the last count was probably around 40,000 people. I believe this year it's going to be in Houston. And, you know, when that started, it was the brainchild of Morgan, and her view was like, why don't we have conferences or places where, Black technologists are seen, are recognized, and are celebrated? And so it started as an experiment. The first year was about 650 people, and year over year we saw massive growth. And if I reflect on that time, I personally, I knew the idea was good, but you don't actually know outside of execution what will work. And what sort of proved and what the market validated was that there was not just a need and a hunger, but an interest. And so that's what I think also exists in this kind of space. And this is why I think it's actually really powerful for media companies, because when you gather people, you start to deal in like a human algorithm. So you're not actually beholden to the platform in the same way. Now, you might use a platform to distribute, to talk about it, to share, but in the room, it always hits different than outside of the room. And so for me, that's kind of been my foray into that, was kind of growing that and also being a part of it. And it kind of shaped how I thought about what's possible in the space. I've been, I think, gifted to be a part of something like that early, but then also see kind of the evolution of some of these other things that came alongside, came at the same time, and came after. And so there's all these kinds of differentiated models, from large scale to intimate to semi-private. And I think that's really what I want to convey in this episode, is that I think in an age of AI, in an age of sort of slop being kind of just cascaded across our feeds, gathering actually is going to take a premium. That's my personal thesis, and my assertion is that gathering is going to become a premium product, because people want to engage with people. that are of like mind or even different in an environment that's not charged by an outside structure. And if you can create that space for people, you can actually engage them in any way you might want to over a long enough period of time.
It's, first of all, that's crazy. Second of all, and when I say that's crazy, like it's crazy that like you were one of the folks on the founding team of like AfroTech, right?
Mhm.
Like a million questions there. First of all, like what did you expect it to be when you did it, right? Like as a creator yourself, what are the things that you expected the outcome to be, right? Like were you like, yo, we're gonna rent a spot and then we're just gonna have folks who are Black and love technology kind of sit down in a circle and hug each other, or like what was the outcome that you thought would be spectacular during that time?
I mean, I give credit where it's due, man. It was Morgan's vision. I think at that time, my view is that there was just not a space for gathering, period. And so I think that point in technology, you sort of start to get to know people the longer you're in the industry and you see people go. But, you know, you got to think about sometimes how lonely it is to be building something. And maybe you actually need to meet a co-founder, or maybe you actually are looking to swap industries, but you're not sure and you have a non-traditional path. These are things that I think now are sort of pathwayed out. They're specific. But, you know, a decade, 15 years ago, it's still hard to pivot, but like the blueprint makes it feel not just possible, but personal. And I think for me, if you can actually get people in a room and seeing the vision, you can kind of create the world as you go. And so I think I always thought about AfroTech as a world. It just happens that there is a convening in that world. And so that's another thing that I think some of these other institutions we're going to talk about have, is that sure, there's going to the thing, but that thing only happens at the gathering spot like once a year, but you're still talking about the world is self-perpetuating.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's other things that are happening, extensions of that, new properties that make it so that even if you didn't show up in person, you were aware of it. It crossed into your maybe, you know, circle of vision digitally, or you heard about it from someone you respect, which then makes it an invitational thing as opposed to sort of like a thing you thought about, right? This is what the Grammys are really good at, is like everyone knows it's Grammys night. Whether you watch it or not, the next day people talk about who won.
Right.
And the speeches and who was there and what they wore and the after party and who didn't win and who should have won and what movie didn't make it, right? Like these are all, or what music didn't make it. Like these are all, I think, extensions of something really powerful, which is that people have an innate desire sometimes to be known, to be seen, to be celebrated, and to be made aware of things. And Convening's actually done well, do all four of those consistently.
Mm-hmm. So there's so many different types of convenings out here, and I feel like we're so far what we've named kind of talks about one type of convening.
Mm-hmm.
But like, what are the different types and styles of convening that, like, at least from your understanding of the business, exist?
Yeah, so I think there are sort of like what I would call like tone setters. So that's kind of like AfroTech, a Culture Con, a VidCon, and these are sort of unique moments in the calendar year that people are building momentum towards, where you know there's a consistency and a potency of the event. Like, you know, it's going to spread. It's viral in that sense. So those typically have an origin story where they grow to scale. They are, you know, have a level of permanence, whether in the city or the environment. So they're big enough where they actually command space both physically, logistically, and I think mentally. Like it takes up space in people's minds. Typically, those events are not just the day of; they're usually like a week long. So you kind of back into kind of the conference.
Yeah.
But there's events, there's dinners, there's things that kind of are built around it. And so that's kind of like what I'd say like the tone setter is. I'd say then there's also sort of like industry standard stuff. So that's like, HubSpot Inbound, right? Which is a massive B2B conference by a company called HubSpot. That's just really well known, that has evolved from simply like, business to business company partners to having massive speakers come. It's turned into kind of a festival environment, which is interesting. You have Cannes Lions, the same thing in France, which we'll get into in a second. But that's really unique because that's like the premier standard for the advertising and marketing industry. Like you go to Cannes, you do deals, awards are given out, you apply throughout the year to be an awardee. And it's sort of like if you win, there is a actual capital associated with being a Lions winner, with being recognized on stage, with speaking on stage, with being in the room. So there's sort of like what you might call an artificial gate, which is that like if you're in, like you're here and like you can just move around. But if you're not, you're sort of watching people inside the gate do stuff, which is fine. But that's a different one. And then I'd say there's kind of the sort of depth and intimacy market. And so that's sort of something like Lectures on Tap, which is a really, really special, I think it's a fire business concept, but it's a gathering of people in localized bars. I think they're in 5 cities now, 5 or 6 cities. And people come and do these 40-minute lectures about a topic in a bar, and people are watching and asking questions. And so it's sort of like, on the one hand, like a different spin on an academic lecture in a third space, bar, lounge, with people who want to hear about it, who also paid to be there. So it's like the audience and the presenter are in a relationship because you came to hear this person talk about this thing at this specific time. So everyone has sort of agreed to the reason why they're there, which is very different than sort of an event where you're like, oh, I heard I should be here. And so that's like a very different kind of market, but that's also why I think it's really powerful how they've grown, because anywhere you go, people might want to hear about a specific thing they didn't know about, they knew about but wanted to hear from a different context, or have heard about but want to learn from an expert. And so they're actually building a marketplace of expertise and curiosity in a place where people are already primed to talk, which would be a bar, right? So that to me is a very unique flywheel effect where you can kind of show up. It's a great deal for a location on a venue on an off night. It's a good deal for the consumer who's like, actually, after work, I do want to learn something about, I don't know, AI and how LLMs are built. And it's a great thing for the presenter who's like, I actually want to get my research out in a specific way. And I have something to give here, and I believe I can do it inside of a condensed environment. So that's why I think that's really special. But that's kind of like the way I've started to see kind of these things. There's more categories, there's more insights, but for our purposes today, that's kind of how I see the landscape.
Yeah, I find Lectures on Tap interesting as well, just because a lot of the other convenings that we spoke about typically, when they do have their events or their times every single year,
Yeah.
they typically have it in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
But Lectures on Tap doesn't necessarily have a singular space
Mm-hmm.
that they own. Instead, they're like, it's gonna be a bar, and it's gonna be in one of these 5 cities, but you don't know which bar it's gonna be at, because that's gonna be determined by the speaker, which space is making themselves available, and obviously the group of people who will be in attendance,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which I think is a nice spin on this idea to actually like frees up this idea of convenings being a very fixed type of concept,
Mhm.
right? Because of course, like, AfroTech and Comic-Con, VidCon, these larger ones, they in a very real way are larger spectacles, right? So like if you wanted to enter into the convenings business as a creator, like if you're thinking about convenings on that scale, you're probably telling yourself that, oh, I'm not necessarily ready to build up to something like this. But like Lectures on Tap actually shows you that it's not necessarily, you don't necessarily need to build that type of infrastructure in order to run an effective convenings business. Instead, really, it's where are you gathering and what is the level of consistency, and really like who is your community,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it also makes me think about the cultural effect of these convenings, right? Like obviously Lectures on Tap has its own culture, and CultureCon has its own culture. AfroTech has its own culture. It's AfroTech has permeated outside of its own culture
Mm-hmm.
in a very real way. We got Jay-Z saying AfroTech on tracks. So it's like the effect of these convenings actually, although they're community focused, they actually can like wrap around and actually affect popular culture in a real way. So I guess where I want to kind of go now is just really digging into the anatomy
Mm.
of a gathering or a convening,
Yeah.
right? Like at least from your experience when building it, like what is the architecture of that type of business?
Yeah. So I think it comes down to three things. One is concentrated access. So I'm gonna use from my understanding. I've never been, but here's what I've studied about Cannes Lions, right? So um, when you're thinking about marketing, advertising, and gathering people, it's an award-driven industry. So people are winning awards in front of their peers collaboratively, and also talking about the future of their industry, what it's going to be, what things need to be shifted and shaped. New ideas are being populated, and so if you think about a festival of creativity, that's sort of what has been known to kind of celebrate people who are legendary in the space, people who are up and coming, and to kind of actually set the taste bar because it's been what it's been for so long. So concentrated access, right? So that's if you spend 5 days there, you're gonna bump into people you otherwise might not have seen or didn't know would be there. And so there's a concentration effect that you want when you're building a convening of like serendipity. It's like walking down a block and seeing somebody, but I haven't seen them in a while, having that conversation that you might not have on Twitter, you probably wouldn't have publicly, but you're in a closed environment, so there's not the same kind of pressure. And you're there to talk about that thing. I would say relationship acceleration. So how quickly can we have a conversation about a deal and actually move through that in this environment, right? So it's beautiful. You're on the French Riviera, you're on a yacht, you're talking about business. That's normal. It's behavior. That's why people would pay 90 racks to rent a yacht and just actually have meetings on the yacht.
Yo, it's crazy that people are paying 90 racks for a yacht at Cannes, but it like at the same time it makes sense who's there. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's like isn't it what 100 bands for like a full corporate team to actually like pull up there to begin with? Then you got to spend the money when you there on top.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, you're talking about flights, but if you were to do like the exercise of flying in, getting your flights, yeah, if you sent 4 people and a couple people wanted to fly, business or whatever, you're looking at a 5-figure sum easily, and then you got hotels or you're staying somewhere, you travel in. Maybe you have a corporate event, you pay, 25, 30 racks to like host a side dinner. If you're really doing it, you actually get a boat and you just have an event on your boat, but then you also take meetings on said boat. So you're in maybe for a quarter million, 300 racks, but let's say you close a multi-year, $2-3 million deal for a quarter million, is $3 million worth it?
And that's the thing, right? Like people tend to forget that like these types of convenings are where deals get done. Like we have this fixed idea that deals are done in like these corporate offices, and it kind of feels like a television show where people are talking or whatever. But really, it's like, hey, we're having a great time in the south of France, and hey, I want to let you know that we're actually coming out with this new type of advertising technology, and we think that you would be the perfect client for it. We could do a deal right now, 18 million over 3 years. We know that you have the budget. What's up? Right. And like the idea that that's how like most of these deals are done
Mm-hmm.
actually adds into the value of the convening itself, right? Because if you're a salesperson on a team, like you want to find a way into that community that way because you know that it drives revenue for your business.
Yeah.
It's that vital. So
Mm-hmm.
so when you're the person creating the convening, if you're really good at, curating that level of community, right? Like you can price that into the attendance of your convening, and that price also plays as a buffer because it tells people, yo, like this ain't, if you can't afford it, this ain't for you.
I mean, this is where the model gets interesting because, quiet is kept. A lot of this stuff is pay to play. So sometimes it's pay to speak. Sometimes it's pay to panel. Sometimes it's pay to have a dinner. Sometimes it's after you pay to speak, you pay for the panel setup. So you pay per install. So maybe you have a 10 by 10 stage, you're paying for the stage. Then you're paying for the bannering on the stage. Then you're paying for the presenting sponsorship if you're that big, right? And so you're thinking about all the different ways that the IP is monetized, right? Because it's not just the logo, it's not just the awards, it's the style of the event, where the event takes place, how the event takes place. So you're thinking about all of these different opportunities for people to have visibility in a thing that is unique, doesn't happen all the time, and not everyone can do, which then creates scarcity, which then creates an opportunity for people to pay to actually be the owner of that scarce moment in time that will be remembered by all the other people that are there.
And by being there, you're basically giving the marketplace a signal. So place also has, so the convening also has signal value.
Right.
So how are these, like, because you just gave a clear example of like you gave a clear example of the structure of the business, but I'm wondering, like, what does that look like in practice?
Mm-hmm.
Can you give me like some examples of what that looks like?
The business or
Yeah,
the structure?
like the structure.
Yeah.
Like, hey, like what does concentrated access look like?
Yeah.
Right? Like we talked about how, okay, Cans has certain people there,
Right.
right? Is that the concentrated access, or is it that there's the base level ticket, but then maybe I've never been to Cans, so
Right.
is there a base level ticket and then like an upper
sure.
ticket? Like,
For sure.
what does that concentrated access look
So
like?
I think concentrated access is based on what you buy into and what the promise of what you buy into is. And so most conferences we've even talked about have different tiers of ticket, which gives you different levels of access.
Mhm.
So it might be that you have a separate section you can just mill about in, and you just end up meeting people who are in VIP with you. It could be that you have a special access that gives you things before and after the conference that other people don't know about, right? And that's that's part of just the payment. It could also be that you get, different elements, swag bags, things like that, things that are attached to, again, the world of the event that create a sense of not just nostalgia, but uniqueness, right? And then like ideally are serving the consumer at the point. I think some of these conferences, in research for this episode, one thing that's interesting is the value of the entity itself is not often talked about. So we talk about the value for like the person coming, but the business itself is often underpriced because it's very hard to price in culture. So culture as like an idea, as a thing we talk about, we hear about a deal, but we don't always hear about the mechanics of how you come to a deal. So Cannes Lions is an interesting example because the company that owned Cannes Lions was purchased outright last year. That company was called Ascential. Ascential had two crown jewels in its sort of portfolio. It had Cannes Lions and a fintech conference called Money 2020. Money 2020 is one of the largest and most recognized financial technology conferences in the world. So people come there, they talk about the future of payments, the future of technology, how Web3 is changing the world, all of these things. It's a stage you want to be on. It's a place where new technologies debuted. Heads of banks are talking. It's a big deal. So there's a company in the UK called Informa. Informa is one of the largest specialized knowledge companies in the world. These are the guys behind Taylor and Francis. So that's like a really big book publishing. So if you've ever been in school, a lawyer, a doctor, these guys probably made your textbook and made you suffer. And it was hard. That side of the business also operates their own conferences. So these guys have Monaco Yacht Week, which I would love to go to. They have London Tech Week. They have Black Hat, which is a cybersecurity conference, really big. So in 2023, they made it through the pandemic and they were like, look, we need to get our investors some bread back. So they messed around and sold a few of their businesses that were about data and technology. So they came back with a bunch of money. Then they went on a buying spree. At the end of 2024, they looked at the market and were like, we're going to do our biggest acquisition ever. We're going to buy Ascential, the company that owns cans and Money 2020. The CEO said, the reason we're going to buy this is because we believe these are underpriced assets and we can actually bundle them into our business to create deeper extensions, because we just added in the foremost advertising and media conference and the world's biggest financial technology conference. So now we have a 5-piece. We have advertising and marketing. We have financial technology. We have luxury. We have the future of technology, and we have cybersecurity. So if you want to come listen, hear, understand, or present what's new, what's coming, what's exciting, or what matters, you have to come through us. And since people already know about it, it doesn't matter if you know who Informa is. It only matters if you know what the conference is. And so at scale, the point I'm trying to make here is that the thing that has value is not the thing that is often seen as valuable in the moment. It's compounded over time by who comes, who continues to care, and who can place a price on that value, because these events give out credibility. That's their product. You spoke on stage, you're a speaker. That's what TED figured out. TED is also a convening, but it's also a noun. I'm a TED speaker. I gave a TED talk. These are actually part of our lexicon. Like as adults, like we know what a TED talk is. Being in the room at TED is also a thing not everyone can do, but anyone can watch a TED talk, which means that the product has distribution built in, even if the room is small. So the stage feels bigger because the talk travels further than the event.
Yeah, because you're not just talking to the stage. Well, actually, the world is the stage.
Correct.
The world is the stage. Like, sure, there's people in front of you, but you talking to planet Earth.
Right.
Because you don't know where your talk is going to end up. So Informa actually is interesting to me. So it sounds like, to be at least, Informa is like the McGraw-Hill of Europe, if that makes any sense. And them deciding, yo, we're going to kind of make this investment. Like, in terms of actual returns, what does that look like for them so far?
Well, it's interesting. So at the time of the deal, Ascential's fiscal 2023 EBITDA, I believe, it was around 72 million or so, right? Mm-hmm. So that's earning before taxes and depreciation. Mm-hmm. They were purchased for 1.2 billion.
Dollars US or
pounds?
Oh, okay.
Pounds sterling. So it's 1.5 billion US.
Yeah.
If you were to take that margin, if you were to imply the margin, that's a 21x multiple
on
their. So what that means is that Informa looked around and said, this is so underpriced, we would rather pay a maximum premium because of what we can do with this thing that is publicly known as a conference. So somewhere privately, owning that asset is worth paying a premium in the public market, because both of these are publicly traded, to completely consume the business, to then actually start rolling up a whole new division, which is about festivals, right? And then you get into this arbitrage global game, which is, okay, how can we scale this, right? So we're in France, but are there other places we might want to go, or we might want to license what we do here in an ecosystem that doesn't necessarily have this? What would be the cost of entering that market since we own the IP? Why wouldn't we just license it? We don't even have to go at this point. They will just pay a tax for us to lend the credibility. That, in my opinion, is why you look at a business like that can gather the biggest firms in the world for a week or 2 weeks in a tiny town in France to transact. It's like the value of that is immeasurable because it's kept going for as long as possible. It's perpetuated by people choosing to go.
That's it. I think the other thing that's also interesting to that is that it's because people are going, it's not necessarily subject to social media and the algorithm, right? Like, it's a business in its own, and it'll always be a business on its own. And sure, like, people can go online and say, all right, Cans wasn't good this year, or Money 2020 wasn't all that this year, but like, you still going next year, right? And if you don't go, you know what you're missing next year, right? So I wonder if that's something that they're also making a bet on.
I think also you can also go and say that. So the irony of like the irony of critique of events at scale is that you can watch from outside, you can be there, but no one is keeping you from your opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So the worst thing about a convening is to be apathetic about it. It's not to hate it. Because if you went and did a review, same thing with music. If you went and did a review of an album that sucked, you still listened to the album to know it sucked. So if you went all the way to an event to be like, yo, this was trash, I didn't like it, it was overpriced, the Flaming Yawn wasn't good, you're still telling me about the thing. So either way, I take it. Like, I win, actually, if I think about it at the macro. Because someone else was like, I had the time of my life. It was awesome. I met someone I never knew. I got a job. Like, both of these things exist concurrently. All I care about is not having you be apathetic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to hear meh. Right? Because the thing is, if you really do this well, you're not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're not for everybody, you can choose who you're for and serve them, which will inevitably piss other people off, which is just the byproduct of being in business and being a person that's like, hey, I'm not for everybody, but who I'm for, they know it. And if you want to come, no problem. Here's the fee of entry. And I actually think in a world where there is no friction, I can open my phone, get on Instagram, there's no friction. There is a demand for certain kinds of friction. There is an actual opportunity to be like, actually, no, there's a gate here. You can hop the gate, you can run through the gate, there's all kinds of gates. You can have a lift gate, you can have a door, you can have a ring camera, but like, there is a respect for having friction. Because if you know it costs something to get in, you treat it differently. This is why when business models are freemium, it's like at a certain point, you treat it differently when you pay for it. Right? When you put your car down for a rental, you know if you do something to the rental, they're going to charge you. So you don't want to get in an accident because it's not your hoopty. And so I think events operate with the same kind of framework around how do I make sure that if I'm bringing you here, you know it was a cost. I know it's a cost in your attention. So now we're actually in an agreement that the cost for you coming here I'm going to meet and exceed your expectations by the quality of what I give, the experience, or the thing I expose you to that you couldn't get elsewhere. That could be people, that could be information, that could be environment. But what's the price of having a life-changing conversation? Is it $200? Is it $400? Is it $4,000? Is it 10 band? Like, you can ask other people what they were willing to pay for the thing that changed their life. And I think that's the power of a convening in a world that's algorithmically charged. Is like, I had a altering experience by doing this thing, and it was worth it because now I have an perspective or an outcome that I didn't see coming that I can actually take and apply. And that's usually the promise, I think, of a convening. And it's the job of the convener to actually present that well. That's part of the marketing. Is like, this is one of our promises, is that you will leave with something. And our job is to prepare you to leave with the right things.
Yo, you know what's crazy? Now it makes sense why so many media companies actually go into convenings.
Yeah.
Because on the internet right now, digital media, like let's say if you're like Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, New York Times, like you have to constantly write articles and constantly make news. If you're in that business, it's hard to even justify people paying for the thing to begin with. And the reason why is because there's so many different sources where people could get the information. There's so many different angles, so many different takes. Like you might not even have the most lit journalists anymore because they're all on Substacks or on their own joint. So if you're Bloomberg, you make Ideas Festival, like that can't be replicated. The price is the price for that, right? Like, so in many real ways, what ends up driving the business in a very real way is actually the once a year convening versus the everyday media thing. And really what the everyday media thing is about prepping somebody for the next convening.
And it's prepping the right people, right? So like New York Times has Dealbook. You would be hard pressed to figure out how much a ticket to Dealbook costs.
How much is it?
They don't publicize it.
Oh.
So you might find anything from, I've heard upwards of 20.
A 20 piece for a ticket?
And I've heard
the regular joint?
This is again, and like we can fact check it and edit, but this is what I have heard just by trying to find it. But because of that, there are things you can do to not advertise it. So you can go and be like, cool, here's what it is. But you got to think about who's in the room at a conference like Dealbook where you see the kind of speakers that are there. You're paying for proximity. So you're willing to do that because of the kind of conversation you can have, the side room conversation you can have with the kind of person who's going to talk to Andrew Ross Sorkin about what's going on. Because he writes a column called The Corner Office. So he's interviewing CEOs exclusively. So Dealbook is an extension of the thing you're used to reading if you read the New York Times. So it is simply the next outgrowth of the thing you have come to understand as part of your diet. So the difference is, I got a diet here for 30 minutes. Now I've got a conference that's my day, but I've been primed for a year to experience that. So there's no real issue with me going to this conference because I know what I'm going to get. It's going to be the same kind of conversation, except I'm in the room now and I'm around other people, some of my peers who are also CEOs, who also took time out of their busy schedule to come to this thing. So now we're leveled because if you're in the room, I don't ask how you got in. It's not the club. Right? The section culture is cooked. If you paid for it, you're in the section. So I don't worry about how you got in, which allows me to have a different conversation. This is why the show Succession hit so hard. Because if you remember, most of the deals never happened across the table. They're at a random media conference in the foothills. They're in a castle.
I've seen enough of this shit. But yeah, you do what you like.
Yeah, we're just passing time till you come up with a counter.
You want to do this here? All right.
Thanks, Ken.
Yeah, give us a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't want to preempt the board, but my view, our view, it's not necessarily compelling.
We're running the numbers, but we want to explore options for us keeping ATN.
Okay. Bad.
We just want to hear you on price for Dad's deal, no ATN.
You don't want ATN.
Okay, sure, but we kind of do.
You don't. I've been talking to Oscar, and we see a way back.
You see a way back. Okay, wow, okay. You see a way back for our phenomenally lucrative and influential news operation?
Well,
You gonna save that?
yeah,
Thanks, bro.
it's fine, but the graph is horrible.
Well, look, honestly, we're concerned about the fit, about your vision, and with half our value coming in stock, 50-50 split, we stand to lose a lot of value if you screw it up, so
Nope.
it's complicated.
It's not complicated. I've seen it. It's a lot of yelling. Small men, big veins.
Fat wallets.
Sure, but long term, I don't think news for angry old people works.
Right? It's like the context, we're still transacting no matter where we are. And so I think that's why design is one of those critical elements when you think about this. Like, what is the physical architecture of the environment that people are going to feel comfortable in? What do the chairs feel like? How is the stage set up? What are the refreshments? Like, all that stuff matters because it's about people holistically feeling good in the space. Like, people design their homes for this. This is why interior design is such a massive industry, because how I feel in your space affects how I behave. And so if I'm getting you, if you paid, then the minute I walk through these doors, every experience I have is a touch point. The ticket's a touch point. The moment's a touch point. The vendors in the parking lot are a touch point. All that stuff reflects on the quality of the event. That's the recap. And now in this world, like, you have creators as correspondents, as extenders of these events, as interviewers doing long form. And so now the whole thing is immersive because a camera was there the whole time. So I can see what it looks like, what it felt like. I can do man on the ground interviews. So I have a whole different media strategy, which means my design needs to be A1 because I should be presuming everyone's going to come, and I couldn't invite the whole world, but they're going to see something. So what do I want them to see? How do I want them to see it? What do I want them to feel and touch? What does the texture feel like so they can get ready for next year if they came, and if they missed, I can't actually afford to miss it. That's crazy. I need to be there. Like, I'm bugging. Like, this is the budget. We allocated already. We got to go because our competitor is cooking right now. We didn't even know they could do that. How do we get that person? And so I think that's part of why it's such a strong apparatus and why I think people, because these events are people driven. It's the speaker, it's the person hosting, it's the story of the founder. All this stuff is about people gathering to have a conversation. So that's why it's like an album. It's like you can pick a beat or you can pick a producer. You pick a producer, you're going to have a different kind of experience, right? It's like Hit Boy and Nas. Like, you know what Hit Boy sounds like and you know how Nas raps. So like they come together and they create a specific sound. That's why I think this part of the business is so valuable, because you can't just recreate a sound. You can't just make another Culture Con. You can't just make another AfroTech. What you can do is be like, here's what's missing, which is crazy because that means the incumbent makes it easier for the entry person to then expand the pie. Because if someone has been there long enough, they're an institution, someone else gets to be like, oh, no, we only serve this line of people. And that line of people goes, oh, so that's like a conference like just for people like me. Like, no problem, right? Like, this is just for like engineers, like audio engineers. Like, I'm at an audio engineer conference and we're talking about like how to make everybody sound crispy. And like, yeah, we go to that, but like, this is our thing. Like, this is our thing. These are the people we think are top of the top. These are the engineers we want to hear from. And everyone in the room has agreed about what quality means. And that's why I think this industry is going to continue to perpetuate in an age where the algorithm's deciding it. And people go, no. Actually, this is a person that deserves to be here. And like, we're going to listen to this person tell us because they're like one of us. So there's an affinity network you can start to build where people go, nah, like, that's the kind of person I want to be with. That's the kind of person that does that at the highest level.
I think about creators wanting to kind of get into this space, right? Because obviously, this entire season we've been kind of speaking to them so far, and So you kind of brought up a little bit earlier about how they're being integrated into it as extensions of the story. But I'm also wondering if, well, not even if, because I've seen this done before.
Yeah.
Where what you do is, instead of creating your own conference, you just create you create an experience that is associated or is aligned with the actual convening, right? Like we saw that with AfroTech buying R&B House Party, right? And just integrating it into, right? But like that's actually a space that you can kind of get into if you're a creator. If you're saying, hey, there's already an existing convening that is tapped in with the audience that I already speak to as a creator. Yeah, sure. Like, it's going to be really difficult to build a convening from the ground up. And I'm not really trying to have like the same level of frequency as like a Lectures on Tap. You're like, yo, you know what? Like every year that we have a Culture Con, I'm throwing the Culture Con Creator Fest or whatever that's going within it, right? That's running the same time, running the same week. And it's literally, if you're there, you're here too.
Yeah.
Right. Or we see some promoters do this when it comes to parties. They're like, yo, I'm throwing the after party. But now, like what the conferences or what the convenings have started to do is they've started, like I mentioned earlier, they started buying the after party and integrating it into the actual experience.
Yeah.
So if you're a creator, like that's actually a nice little angle that you could play a game with and say, hey, like what if I just wanted to meet with my community inside of this larger community, right? Because, you know, communities are all subjective. If you're, yeah, sure, you go to Comic-Con and Comic-Con is all the comics, but like you want to throw a party for Spider-Man fans, right? Like, but then that Spider-Man fan party becomes so crazy that like Comic-Con is like, yo, like we kind of want to integrate you into this thing as a permanent fixture. Are there some other ways that you've seen folks kind of integrate themselves, or like what other, I guess I'm gonna just create a word, I'm gonna just call it side missions.
Right.
I'm gonna call it side missions for this. But have you seen other ways that that's been integrated, or just ways that I haven't thought about yet? At least here.
So ESPN just did this. That's really crazy. So ESPN, obviously Monday Night Football, game day, like college football is an interesting opportunity to talk about convenings too, because there's a season, right? So everywhere all over the country, people are gathering in stadiums to watch football. There's a word called sort of monocultural events. These are events that sort of massive amounts of people pay attention to. So think the Olympics, Super Bowl, the Canelo and Terrence Crawford fight, things that sort of the world leans into. ESPN hired a girl named Katie Feeney recently. Katie Feeney went to Penn State, and while there built a massive following, about 14 million people doing sideline reporting on football.
I am in Kansas City right now for the NFL draft, and today I'm taking you along with me for a day in the life of an NFL draftee. This is something I've always been so curious about. There's so many feelings and emotions that go into this day, and we're gonna see it all with Joey Porter Jr.
So ESPN goes, okay, so there is, right, the dead internet theory, which essentially is this idea that there is a limit to the amount of human beings that could be on the internet at any given time, right? Because there's a finite amount of people. Okay. In that reality, how can we start reaching people who wouldn't normally just watch ESPN, right? Which means we probably have to get a bit younger, or who wouldn't typically watch football in the same way we typically might consume it, right? They might not sit down and watch 4 quarters, but they are on TikTok and they do follow people and they do follow Katie. So we're going to hire her, not as talent, as a correspondent, just like the other ex-players we have. And we're going to put her on the field with a phone and a camera team. And she's going to walk around with her audience live and capture not just content, but series, player interviews. And we're going to expose them to a brand new side of ESPN. So you could say that like she's talent, but that would be a misnomer, because talent's just like, hey, I'm on stage, I get a deal. This is a person with an audience So she's in partnership with ESPN because you cannot buy the 14 million people she has. She built them. So what you can do is extend your IP through her, which means you have to transact. So this is one of the ways I'm starting to see creators not think about themselves simply as like, oh, I'm talent. It's no. My audience is hyper valuable because I'm teaching them something. So them watching football with me is different than them watching football with Ryan Clark because I'm me. So that's actually a very different introduction to the game, the parts of the game, who I am. And so they have an affinity for me, and through me, they can get an affinity for the game. And I think that to me is also another way to think about like my unique perspective could give someone access to something they wouldn't normally watch. But because I'm there, they might watch through me as a passive participant, which then could make them interested in the game generally because they realize that, oh, there's a place for me here. Oh, this isn't as complicated. Oh, these rules actually make sense. Oh, that's what a 4th and 1. Like there's a whole world of people who might not know the mechanics of the game, but know the fashion of a player. And what that means is that you can actually bridge that gap between something someone wouldn't care about, something someone really cares about, and that's a person. The bridge are now people. It's not a brand. It's not an idea. It's not commercial. It's people. So as a creator, think about what you're a bridge to and think about what toll you want to charge people to cross that bridge. Right? Your audience is already paying with that attention. And so it's like, okay, cool. But like there's another side of that bridge that people aren't paying, which is access to that audience that actually they want to come to their side of the bridge. And if you're smart about it, you can actually transact on both sides and not have to compromise yourself because you were already going to go do that thing. Now it's just how do you turn the lights onto that thing? So that to me is like one of the most powerful examples I've seen of a legacy media brand taking a pretty big bet, but a really smart one to be like, okay, like, can we actually reimagine how we cover this thing that we're going to do anyway with a person who did it at a high level and she's fresh out of undergrad. She's like just graduated and like she's out here like I'm on ESPN, I'm on camera. And I think that's actually the future of some of this even more broadly, like correspondence. It's like, what audience are you coming with? And how do we get access to it? And it's like, you got to pay. You got to pay. So what are they paying with and how are they paying you?
So I didn't know about that. That's actually really interesting because what I was originally thinking was just a creator setting up shop within and or around the convening.
Yeah.
But you're saying, yo, like actually you could build such a strong audience on your own that like the convening will want to integrate you into the convening without you even having to be there prior, right? Because you're actually talking about the subject matter, or you're actually tapped into an audience that we want to tap into. It's like a very interesting way to at least increase the audience size of that particular event. So like if you wanted to get another 14 million viewers of the Super Bowl or of that game, you're like, let's just call Katie. Right. And I think that's pretty dope.
It's also, I think it's about changing the idea of yourself from talent to distribution network. Like you're a distribution network. Like they're like you are a node through which people can experience a new thing. And so I think it's just a mindset shift of being like, I don't just have an audience, I'm creating something, but I'm also distributing it because I have trust. And because I have trust, people care about what I say and how I say it. So if you can actually make that switch, you can start to see different opportunities. And you're not just signing a talent deal. You're signing a distribution deal. Right? So in a way, Katie's a label.
Yeah.
Right? Like Katie's actually a label that they are transacting to be like, yo, we have this really interesting product and we need to license it. And Katie's like, cool. I have this audience who I have curated, nurtured through my collegiate experience. And is now not just excited, but like I'm at ESPN. Like it's my job. Like the world, the lore she can create, being at the game, talking to people behind the scenes at ESPN. There's whole new shows. There's whole new IP that she gets to executive produce, not just be talent, but produce on. Like there's a whole world of earning opportunity when that shift happens because of the audience she built and how she built it and how sticky they are and how she approaches the game, how she talks about football, how she asks questions. We are associated with people. This is the same with Oprah. It wasn't just that Oprah interviewed people. It was how Oprah did it, what Oprah talked about, how she sits people down in her garden with her massive fruit. Like, that's her thing. And so we became not just associated with Oprah, but you're in Oprah's garden. Like, you're having a conversation with Oprah in that place. This is the same model, just positioned differently for things we normally do. And I actually think we're going to see more and more of that. And I think that's one of the opportunities, is to take a little bit of a mindset shift and be like, who am I distributing information to? What do they find value in? And how can I actually create an attraction for people who want to reach these people, who are actively trying to, but don't have a me or don't have a context that I have? And that's what I think is, these platforms have constraints. There's like an upper limit to sort of what you can do depending on what the platform does. And so I think one of the possibilities about Convenings or being a distributor as a creator is to get outside those platform constraints in a certain way and to develop the ability to gather people around an idea, a topic, or a feeling, and to test that out. Like, I think that's one of the most powerful things you can do right now, is to feel like, can I put 30 people in a room to talk about something for 2 hours? What would they want to talk about? What would they pay for? What matters to them? Can I serve these people offline in a way that makes them excited to tell people they were here? And I think if you can do that enough and get that information, you can actually build anything.
At least the way I'm hearing what you're saying is like being only digital is risky. Like, if you're only digital, that's actually the highest risk to your business, because the moment that things in the digital landscape change, that's the end of your business.
It's the end of the audience growth. You know how this goes. Yeah. Like, you get an algorithm tweak on YouTube, or you get, something happens on Instagram. They're not prioritizing comments, or the way they're prioritizing videos changes. It's a pandemic. It's a chaos. I remember, like, I think it was last year where, like, Instagram was down for an hour or something like that, and people lost their minds. And that's because I'm using this to transact. And that's borrowed land, no matter how we talk about it. No matter what platform you're watching this podcast on, like, it's borrowed, right? So even the way you want to think about this stuff is not that you shouldn't be here. You should get everything you can out of it. But there is a point where people are interested in different formats and things that are physical and things that are real and things you can touch. And it's like, there's the opportunity to create those experiences that are unique to you, that you can build a community around. And I think that to me is the art of this thing. That's the art of business building. Is like, what can I uniquely create that enables me and my audience to get closer together around something that they value and I have an expertise at, and they feel like I'm giving them something they can't get somewhere else. And that, to me, is the fun of it. Is like, if you can figure that out, man, like, it doesn't matter what Dalgo does, because you can get in contact with those people directly. And those people, you have a trusted experience with them. And so it's like, okay, no matter what's going on, like, I know they want to gather and I know they want to talk about this kind of stuff. So I'm going to show up in a way that they are used to seeing, because maybe they're not seeing me in the same way anymore. Maybe I got, I'm shadow banned, or all these other things that happen. It's like, yeah, but I can meet people and they can come see me.
Yo, honestly, I think that's it. That's the final bar. Like, that's what somebody really needs to hear in order for them to kind of get into thinking about what they should build, or that they at least should be trying to do that. You know what I mean? So,
right.
So that's it for this episode. I'm Carl Joseph Black. That's Jonathan Jackson. Don't follow me. Don't follow him. Don't follow us. Just follow the money. We'll see y'all.
Don't stop. Don't stop. Don't stop. Don't stop.